So, welcome everyone to episode 4 of the Life Behind the Trig podcast. We are joined this evening by, once again, myself, Kyle Randalls, Sinclair Patience, and joining us this evening, we have Mr. Scott Ryder, aka the Big Man. Scott, welcome in. Thanks for joining us this evening, just to sort of go over yourself and add some topics and another name to the discussion.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've listened to all 3 of your podcasts. I've really enjoyed them. So I'm really happy you asked me to come on.
No, I mean, thank you for being the first to come on and show a bit of interest. I think the best way to jump in here, Scott, is if you want to give yourself a little introduction, your background, and what sort of brought you to the games. I mean, feel free to take it away, and we'll chip in as we move on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my background is track and field, really. Although I did bobsleigh for about 3 years. My background was shot put and discus throwing as a sort of junior athlete, and then under 23. And then somehow managed to get myself to a Highland Games. In fact, it's funny how you were talking about Hamish. We talked about Hamish quite a bit, let's be honest. But my first games was Hamish's games in Nebworth.
I'd assume, Scott, that your first games would have been via Dougie Edmonds, but quite interesting to hear that.
No, it was a few years before Dougie invited me up. No, it was actually Colin Bryce who, I think Hamish had phoned him up and said, "Do you know anyone down south who can throw?" And so he said, I know my mate Scott, he can throw the shot. So I came along. It was good games, actually. Vat was there. Vat was, throwing really well, actually, back then. Francis was still throwing, so I actually threw against Francis. Gregor was throwing. Who else? Hamish himself was still throwing. I actually competed against Hamish.
Have you got a rough idea what year that would be?
Yeah, I reckon it was 2001, 2002. I think I was still bobsledding at the time.
Ah, right.
Yeah, it was great, and we did all the events, all Hamish's crazy events. We did the 12 carpool and press the bank, or I don't. No one's ever called bench press the bank except Hamish. But then I didn't do another games for a couple of years, really. I was kind of doing other things. I was bobsledding, and then eventually I think Doug Edmonds called me up. I think it was 2004 to come and do the Glasgow Green Games. So I went along and did that. It was my first proper games, really, in Scotland. And I think I threw remember I put the stone 58.9. That was my first time throwing a stone. He made a big deal of it, And so then he invited me to all his games. I mean, I wasn't much good at anything else. I couldn't really throw weights particularly well, and my hammers were really poor. Weight over the bar wasn't too bad. I think I did about 15.6 there. I didn't never really improve much throughout my whole career, actually, the weight over bar. So now I sort of just did all the Doogie's games. Really invited me to all his games, and back then he had a lot of games. He had Calendar, which was 2 days, Aviemore, Glenarm, obviously Glasgow Green, and he had a few other ones as well. So that was my sort of introduction to the games. And competing against all the best guys in the world back then, I mean, Ryan was there, Larry, Sean Betts, Gregor obviously was at his best, Val was still throwing pretty well back then. And then obviously the Venters came along, Kirill Chuprunin. So, I mean, it was a tough crowd to throw against.
Straight into the deep end.
What sort of, what kind of attracted you towards the games, Scott? Because obviously at the same time as doing the games, you were also training for athletics still, weren't you? And how many times did you win the British Championships for the shot?
I won it 4 times indoors and once outdoors. I mean, in a way I look back and I regret that I sort of persevered so long with the shot. I kind of wish now that I'd sort of specialised at the Highland Games, earlier than I did. I was very much still convinced I could go to the Olympics as a shot putter and not just as a bobsledder. And, I didn't train hammers. I didn't throw weights. I just part the shot.
Can I ask?
And then maybe did a few weeks training before the games, and then just turned up and threw. Which was why I wasn't particularly good at any of the other events.
But you went. Was it 2010 and then 14 that you went to the Commonwealth Games?
My first one was 2006. That was Melbourne. Yeah. And that was, so I'd already done a few games then. And then, 2010 Delhi and obviously Glasgow in 2014. I went to the 2002 Winter Olympics. That was in Salt Lake City. I was only sort of 23 or 24 then. As a
For the bobsleigh. Did you bobsleigh with Colin Bryce then? Is that kind of how he got you into games?
That's how we met. Yeah, that's how we met. I remember I tried out for the team. I got a phone call from I knew a few guys who were bobsledders. I got a call one morning from the coach, and they were running a sort of talent ID session, inviting me down to push. And I mean, pushing a sled is such a basic skill. I mean, if you're fast and strong and you don't mind running downhill, you know, because it is a bit scary running downhill really fast. You know, you're going to be good really pretty much straight away, and that's kind of how it was for me. So I sort of got into the British team really quickly, and went from sort of never having, you know, in sort of July never having done any bobsledding to October competing for Great Britain in the GB1 4-man squad. You know, it all happened very quickly.
Yeah.
And I was still trying to throw shot and discus in the summer actually.
I mean, stuff, Kyle. We've never had that call from the scout. I don't know why.
The only time I've had anything like that is one of my high school teachers mentioned the British handball team to me, but I never really took that too seriously. But Scott,
handball.
Yeah, handball. The thing I was going to ask you, Scott, is as a you know, pretty high level shot putter, what did you make of coming up here to do the games and someone handing you a stone and saying, "Oh, we're throwing this today"?
It didn't bother me in the least. I have to say, it just didn't bother me in the least. I think I held it differently. I always grip across the stone. I don't like to feel anything in my palm. So you guys always grip across the stone. I've noticed. Along the stone. I always grip across it. But no, it didn't bother me. I found spinning on grass with running spikes be, you know, pretty good. You know, and if it's wet, just wear a different kind of shoe or just modify what you do. I took to it really quickly. I think it just didn't bother me. And you know, I actually sometimes prefer some stones. You know, especially sort of nice big, you know, ones that sort of sit in your neck and you can feel a bit of pressure in your palm. I've always quite enjoyed putting a stone. You know, it's the small stones I don't like. You know, the sort of flat ones, like ones that feel a bit like a pancake. You know, like Braemar. Open stone, that kind of one. I don't like ones like that. I've always struggled a bit.
For the first few years, Scott, when you kind of came into the games, I take it you'd kind of bank on the stones, and then obviously you then had guys like Sebastian and Lucas then came along as well, and you were all sort of putting up close to 60 foot. But do you think that kind of spurred you on a wee bit with your Highland Games putting?
I went over 60 feet, I think, in my second ever games. I think I did Aviemore, I think, Doug Edmonds. It might be my third, actually. And I did the 60-50 double that day. I did 60 with the light, 50 with the heavy.
You didn't hit the 51-1, though.
No, well, not there. I did it at Sky. I did 51-5, actually.
I remember you. Did you not give Hamish a little phone call when you did that?
No, but I saw him at a boy and I said to him, and he I don't know what I was hoping for. I thought you might say well done to me, but he actually he sort of went, but I did it 40 years before you. And I felt like an arse actually for telling him. But I mean, it was really hard going. You know, winning stone competitions at that point. You know, a big heavy stone. Sebastian was, and obviously Lucas was fantastic as well. So, I mean, you had to be throwing 58, 59, 60 feet. If you weren't, you just weren't going to get anywhere. I mean, and then, of course, Dominic Slavinsky showed up as well. I mean, I can remember one day in Sky throwing, I think, 59 with the light and 49 with the heavy, and I got fourth in both. I mean, that's a tough crowd, you know?
Yeah, there's been some really high level. I think my PB in the Lightstone is at Creef, and I put over 54 foot, and I was absolutely delighted. But I think I took 7th place with the competition that day a few years ago. It's when Berger was over, and I think he took Jeff Cate's record. Eh?
Yeah, he did. He didn't. I think he got it with the light, didn't he, and not the heavy, or the other way around.
Yeah.
And was he not very?
And of course,
close?
It was that day in Dunfermline where he put 67 feet and just couldn't stay in the tree. I think you remember that pretty well.
That's right. Yeah, it was a nice field there, and he had an absolutely massive putt, 67 foot. Yeah, but I suppose then in addition to your stones, you've kind of gone on to be pretty well known for your weights as well, especially the lightweight. You've gone over 90, haven't you?
It was there, yeah. I mean, it was a tad downhill, let's be honest. But I mean, 91.8, I think, as I remember. Yeah, I mean, I think lightweight was the event that came next. You know, after the putts. But definitely, I remember starting to beat guys with the lightweight. I've always really enjoyed that. It's actually my favourite event to throw. I love throwing a lightweight. It's a really lovely feeling when you got it moving. Feet are moving quickly under you, and you've got that lovely relaxed arm. It's always an event that's really appealed to me. I love to watch people throwing it really far. Yeah.
And then you took the heavyweight record at Braemar, didn't you? Over 45 as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've done well at Braemar over the years, and I got the light record. I was there when Bruce Robb broke the light record. I was just behind him, and then a couple of years later I beat it, and I got it again recently up to about 88. But the first time I ever threw that long weight at, I think the first time I went to Braemar, I think it was 2005 or 6. I'd never thrown a heavy weight that long. I hadn't got a clue what to do with it. I was all over the place. But those long weights, we don't get to throw them a lot in Scotland. I think if we all threw long weights like that every games with personal best, a couple of feet further, I think.
We were kind of talking about that in one of the previous podcasts, but what do you tend to train with for the 56? So will you use a block weight, or will you go with a chain?
I always prefer to train with a long weight. I find it's easier to adapt to throwing a shorter weight than to train with a short weight and then have to adapt to a long weight. If I do throw a short weight, you just got to put it in a bit faster preliminary. But yeah, so I always throw with an 18-inch weight. But I'm not throwing much heavyweight at the moment, no, that's for sure. Just playing around with a lightweight now and again. Yeah,
it's a funny time. Are you still doing a bit of throwing sort of this season? I know we're not going to have any games, but are you trying to keep yourself ticking over?
Yeah, I'd really convinced myself that we'd get some games late. I thought had cancelled Lon at Braemar. I thought we're going to still get some. So I was training. Yeah, I've been putting and throwing hammers and lightweight. But I think I'll carry on anyway. I think it's good. I think everyone should, get out and keep training hard. And even if you throw a few training PBs, I think that's something, isn't it? Something to take away from the year's training.
Yeah, definitely. And you're doing a bit of coaching now as well, predominantly for athletics, aren't you?
Yeah, I coach a couple of guys. I mean, not as much as I'd like. I don't really have time to do that 2-3 nights a week down the track kind of thing. So, but I do run one session at my local track, and I coach a shot putter, decent level in Britain, a guy called Youssef Zatat. So yeah, I'm getting more into coaching, and I've tried to help a few guys with the Highland games, try to pass on a few bits that I've picked up over the years, because it's not easy. It's not easy. No one really wants to help you that much on the professional circuit, and I've benefited over the years from people helping me, and the few people that will. So I think it's important to pass on what if you can.
Yeah, we talked about that. I mean, if you get a smile sometimes from some of these older throwers who are now maybe judges, you think you've done something right. It can be quite tough at times.
They are, and it's a difficult one as well. I've always hated that sort of generation of throwers that sit around and watch the next generation coming up and grumble about how rubbish they are. Wonderful they used to be,
Yeah.
And I'm getting to the age where I'm going to stop soon. I don't want to be like that. I think
you'd be a guest judge.
Yeah.
How have you found things in general coming up as an English athlete? Is there the old rivalry there, or have you found it pretty welcoming?
Very welcoming. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. No, I can honestly say I've never on a games field. Yeah, I mean a few things said in jest, obviously, but I've always taken those as they were intended.
Most of it's just behind your back.
Yeah. No, I mean I've always felt amazingly welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a great experience.
Good stuff. I think so. Obviously, over the last 10 years, you've been pretty frequent on the Scottish Games circuit, and I think your job as a teacher allows for that in the summer months. But you've also travelled a huge amount over the past 10 to 15 years with the games. What would you see as being kind of some of your favourite Highland games or experiences within the games?
Well, I don't think I've travelled as much as some athletes, but I've been to a lot of games you've been to. You mentioned Brestweir, I think, in the last podcast. Certainly, the first time I went there was, I think, the best experience I've had there. That was 2010. We did our HGF Super Series, and the weather was good. I mean, that was a fantastic weekend, and the crowd. I've never seen the crowd bigger there on that bank. That was pretty awesome. So that definitely stands out. Great game. Victoria. I've been there a few times. I've really enjoyed that. Obviously, Pleasanton and Loon, they're all great games. I haven't done too many more, actually. I think the first foreign trip I did was Iceland. That was interesting. Doug Edmonds sort of hooked me up with Hilti Arneson. I went out and did the games.
I don't think they run that games anymore, do they? Because I know Peter Goodmanson was involved, and guys like Matt Vincent and Spencer Tyler went over a few times.
Yeah, that was more recently. Yeah, no, I didn't go to those. And this was just a sort of game that Hilti ran. But, I mean, he really looked after me. Him and Simon showed me all the sights, and we did quad biking up the mountain. Fantastic trip. I mean, you always, it's such a great way to travel.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that in the last episode, but I remember I mentioned it as well. I had a terrible performance in Victoria. It's a great Highland Games, but I largely put it down to the fact that we went on a 4-hour boat trip the day before.
the white knuckle ride.
I think about 30 minutes in, I needed the toilet, and we then had another 3.5 hours.
I know, that was, and then we just saw some whales from 200 meters away, didn't we?
Yeah, terrible experience. Yeah. I remember Lauren laughing, waving us off from the shore.
Yeah, he knew, didn't he? He knew. But you got to do things like that. You have to.
Yeah, no, definitely. But, Kyle, have you got anything you'd kind of like to ask Scott? I know we've got a number of topics coming up, but
I was just gonna ask you, Scott. I mean, do you have any standout throws that you yourself have, quite a bit of pride, you feel quite proud of, even just thinking about? Is there any highlights for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few big stone putts, which is, I've always looked back on with a bit of pride. Certainly, throwing 51.5 with the heavy ball was something I was pretty proud to do. Throwing 91 with the 28, but I think probably the throw that I'm most proud of was throwing 121 with the heavy hammer at Worlds in 2016. That was a big throw to win the heavy hammer last throw. I think that's probably the sweetest throw I've ever hit. And really sort of pleased with that. Because it was an event that I wasn't really very good at. The hammer. That was a really wild distance. Throw 121. So that one I would definitely is my sort of standout throw.
The other thing I was going to say is 2016 is a year for you. Am I right in saying you didn't lose a single games?
No, I did. Because I turned up at Old Meldrum, if you remember, bad back, and then threw one throw in the light hammer. I paid £10 to get in. I think I won £4. I think I took a sixth in the light hammer, and then I couldn't even drive home. I had to wait for Sebastian and Lucas to finish that.
I remember that. We would always have a bit of a competition on who can get into the games for free.
With the Polish charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Polish charge.
I think the Ventas are well in the lead with that competition. But what changed for your hammers? Obviously, I think previously you'd thrown them pretty far, but you took a big jump, didn't you, in your both hammers, light and heavy?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I threw 139 feet back in 2008, so I had thrown hammers far, not so much the heavy. But I think I hit a real low point in 2015. I remember I think it was a Boyne. I lost at a Boyne to Lawn. I think I took 2/7 in the hammers. So gave him 12 points, and just couldn't catch that up through the day. And I think I was throwing the hammer so bad at that point that people sort of took pity on me, and sort of said, "Scott, you're all over the place. You look like you've touched a hammer in your life." And I think I just screwed myself up. You find yourself falling into the trap of trying to doing. I think Dan McKim was throwing the hammer really far at the time, and I was trying to sort of copy a few things he was doing, and it was working a bit in training, and then it was just falling apart in competition. So I think I just said to myself, "All right, I'm just going to get it with the hammer. I'm just going to keep the low point between my feet and keep my arms long and swing it as hard as I can." And I sort of finished throwing that season with the hammer a bit better. I think I had a heavy hammer PR, I think, at Pleasanton. Right at the end of the season, and then I just started training with it, and I think I sort of picked up the hammer sort of February time, and it just clicked together straight away. I was hitting sort of training PBs winter. I just found a little bit of rhythm. It's funny once you get it, you sort of realise where you've been going wrong. Up until that point, I'd never really had any real groove with it,
Yeah,
Scott, I feel like I remember you sitting at a games with me, and I remember you throwing pretty well on the hammer, and you'd said something to the extent of, that's it's not going to happen again. Like I figured it out, and I remember you coming out in 2016, and your hammer was completely different.
It was that games at a Boyne. I made a joke. I said, "You wait, tomorrow's Bridge of Isle. I'm going to be a new man."
Yeah, that was it. I'm a new man. That was it.
Tomorrow I'm a new man. It was like a little trick I played on myself just to sort of take the pressure off, And it worked. I think I threw 130 feet the next day. Just enjoying myself a bit more, not putting pressure on.
Psychological. I think speaking of 2016, you're the only man to ever go unbeaten in an event at Crieff, the Open Scottish Championship.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, but again, it was all down to my hammers. Normally Crieff, we'd always be playing catch up, but I won the first two events. It's heavy and light hammer there. I mean, I've always thrown well at Crieff. It's been a good place for me. In many ways, it's my favourite games because it always seems to come at the right time. You have that sort of week off leading into it, and you obviously got that huge volume of throwing that you've done all through games a week. There's so many games, and then that week off just comes at a perfect time. And I always sort of feel in the best shape of the season at Crieff. Yeah,
I suppose before that, in 2016, you'd also won the World Championships at Falkirk. Do you think we discussed it in a previous episode, the sort of differences in the American games compared to the games in Scotland? Do you think you had a bit of a, as well as obviously throwing very well, do you think you had a bit of a home advantage with it being a sort of familiar one-day games?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there were lots of things about the games that definitely suited me. Not having to fly across the Atlantic is a big advantage. And it was, I mean, if I had to design a games, to win my first world title, it would have been that, putting a shot so for light and a heavy stone open. Obviously, that really suited me as well. Nice cold, damp day, muddy ground. It had all the right ingredients. And again, Falkirk was a good place for me as well. I always thought quite well at Falkirk.
Yeah.
So it's a nice venue. Good sort of familiar feel to it.
I suppose like that was a great year for you, and you've had a number of really big throws. But what memories would stick out for you from the Highland Games aside from big throws or good games? What memories stick with you the most?
I wonder how many times he's going to mention Hamish Davidson here.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's those days, I think, perhaps where you're not expecting it to happen that end up being the most memorable. I mean, I think, did any of you guys do Hamish's last games?
I was there. Yeah, is that when Matt was over?
Yeah, I mean that in some ways was the worst Highland Games I've ever been to, and yet it's probably the most memorable in lots of other. It was the worst field, the worst weather.
Yeah.
It was just. I remember stumbling through that field. It looked like, I don't know. It looked like something from the First World War. And there was a guy marking the trig with sawdust, and the trig. There was bits of the box were sort of a foot higher than other bits of the box.
Oh, that's right.
And there was puddles in the box, and he said, "Are you ready for records today, lads?" And we'd done. I think that was my fourth day on the bounce.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, we have a good laugh. We travel around together. We know each other pretty well, and we share a lot of laughs together. I mean, that's definitely something that makes the games pretty special, and a lot more fun.
No, definitely. I think there's definitely a camaraderie at the games that you maybe don't get in the likes of athletics, and we've all done different sports, but the games is the one that we kind of tend to stick with. So, yeah. I knew Hamish would come up again.
I don't think we'll ever be able to go.
He's going to be a constant factor in the podcast, I think.
Where would you see the sort of future of the sport going, Scott? So, I mean, now we're seeing more and more collegiate throwers come through in America. Do you think that will change things in Scotland, or where do you see things going?
I don't really know much about America. I mean, I don't know if there's more collegiate throwers throwing now. Well, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me when I first started coming up, there was lots of really good Americans. There's still lots of really good Americans. I think I'm not sure if anything's changing there particularly. I mean, in Scotland, there's definitely some talented guys. I think there's a lot of guys who could be a lot better than they are as well. I think if you want to think about the future of the sport, it's getting the best out of the guys you've got throwing now. Yeah. I definitely think there's a few guys who compete regularly on the professional circuit that could be a lot better, but it's difficult. There's no substitute for doing the work, and you've got to have that desire to do that work. There's no shortcuts, and you know that. So I think helping people to perfect their techniques and showing them how to train is one. They've got to have that motivation from within, because the opportunities are there. That's the thing. There's this thing called the Highland Games, and you can do all these competitions. You can have all these fantastic trips. You can meet all these people. The opportunity is there. And I think that there, a lot more say than in track and field, unless you can reach very highest levels, and how many of us can really. So I think there's definitely some good athletes coming through, and there's days where you do the Glenfiddich under 25s, and I think last year particularly there wasn't many there, and I think it's easy to be pessimistic, but there are some good athletes coming through. They just need to to realise they need to settle down for a few years before they they can really hit those sort of top levels.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said if you're up and coming as a Highland Games athlete, especially in Scotland, to just settle down, like you said, and do the circuit. So there's so many opportunities to compete and to throw in Scotland that you don't necessarily need to jump into trips straight away. And as you kind of touched on it can be quite challenging to travel overseas and throw well and to your potential, and that's definitely something I've struggled a wee bit with is traveling and throwing well. Over the years, I think one of my better games has been Fergus, because that was a much shorter trip. It was only 5 or 6 hours, but when you're traveling to kind of California, you're 10 to 12 hours, and it's something you've always done pretty well. I think you've performed well at big championships overseas. Is there anything that you'd maybe like to talk about there, and kind of your mindset to that?
See, I don't think I have. I look back and see a sort of string of cock-ups, or sort of, I've been in a few sort of world champs where well placed, maybe leading or close to the lead after day one, and then it's always those weaknesses. In 8 events, you're always going to make one mistake. It's very unlikely you're going to perfect across the board. You're always going to drop points in one or two areas, and that can be really costly. I always felt, a sort of 2-day games in, West Coast, you always had a bad day. If I threw well on the Saturday, I would always feel completely flat on the Sunday, and that was usually the way it went. And you can just watch your chances slip away from you because you just don't have, you just don't have it in you. And I watched, some of the world's best, particularly from America, come up to Scotland, and you can just see exactly the same thing happening. You're looking at, you just think you're tired, you're jet lagged, and this isn't quite what you're used to, and it's difficult. So I think everyone struggles with travel. We see that experience with it, don't you? The more you do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was going to say we see that for a bit. Often you'll get questions about why is the SHGA world record in the way over the bar just over 17 foot. But then a lot of these guys have been here and attempted that record, and it's largely due to the conditions. We've got knockoff bars, uneven ground. Things are different.
You need to
in
remember,
Scotland to overseas
as well. The weight of the bar is almost always the last event here, so you're never throwing it fresh. You're never throwing it towards the end of even a second day. It's almost always the very last event.
Yeah.
And there is more gravity in Scotland.
I do believe that.
Fact. What's one of the most impressive things you've seen at the game, Scott? For me, I think your performance at Crieff in 2016 was probably one of the most impressive things I've seen overall. But is there anything that stands out for you in terms of other people?
Yeah, I guess so. I think probably Spencer's performance to win the Worlds last year. I think it was just
that loon.
Yeah, it was just unbelievable. I've never seen anyone produce performance like that. Broke the world record in the weight over bar. 19.5. Okay, knock sort of tied on bar, but still 19.5. I think
2 feet over.
I think he narrowly fouled a 98 foot 28, and he was just dominant in everything. He won the caber, he won with the hammers. I mean, it was just an astonishing performance, and he really, he really put everything together. I've never even heard of a performance as good as that. I think that stands out.
Yeah.
I don't think I can match that with anything else I've seen.
Can you imagine being Spencer and getting to a point where throwing world records is something you almost expect?
Yeah, I mean, and also, to do it at the Worlds. And it's one thing to do it, in your backyard, mate, or whatever, or course of the season. He's do it at a World Champs late in the season as well. I mean, it was quite something.
September, Loon, isn't mid-September, isn't it?
Yeah. 3rd September. That's right. It's 3 days. That Loon. It's a 3-day competition. You know that? Have you done Loon?
I've never done Loon, Scott. No.
Did you turn Loon down?
I was invited to Loon one year and couldn't make it. Yes. Yeah.
How does that 3-day format work, Scott? How would that play out?
Well, basically, you have thrown hammers on the Friday. It's not a big field, and it's just not cut out for other events happening whilst hammers the throwing. So they do all this hammer on Friday, a big bar tent, and people watch. It's actually quite fun. Weather's nice, especially, and then Saturday, Sunday, 3 events plus challenge events. So they do challenge cave and the stone carry as well. It's the only games that I've done compete over 3 days.
I can imagine that presenting its own challenges as well, being over 3 days. As we've said so many times, we do the full 8 events just in one day here. It's a case of you start at say 12 to 1 o'clock and you're finished by 5-6 o'clock. You just get them in. And that's why you've previously heard us discuss the fact that 2 throws would be the common. If there's too many individuals competing, they'll cut them out of throws to save time.
I mean, I think the Highland Games it's a very peculiar sport when you first start, you kind of still have to compete against the best in the world. I mean, if the games are open, if you turn up to one of the games in Games Week and you want to throw, well, you're going to be throwing against best people in the world in your first ever games or your second.
It's like
it's a very unusual setup, that, and there's some good things about it, and I guess there's some bad things as well.
I mean, the truth of the matter is, most of the summer throughout Scotland, you're basically competing in essentially a European Championship. Everyone will be here for the bigger part of the year, and you could technically compete in 3 or 4 European Championships throughout the summer just with the quality of people who are coming across to take part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the level of competition, I think, has really come on in the last year or two, especially with people such as yourself now start truly world class level, and of course we lost Lorne to Canada. If he was still in Scotland throwing, I think the standard would be very, very high.
It's interesting. I was actually speaking to Lorne after the first episode, and he was saying that this is probably the first winter he's put in like a proper graft in terms of gym work and weight training. So I'm pretty sure this whole thing's his fault.
He's just saying that he's not really done any.
I suppose the big question, Scott, is what lies in the future of Highland Games for Scott Ryder?
I don't know really. I keep thinking I'm going to retire. I have retired once. I kept it to myself, and then I just changed my mind, started training again. But I don't know. As long as my body feels good enough, and I feel I can still win games, I'll keep throwing. So I did intend to throw this year. I'd like to think I'll be back next year to throw, but it all depends on my body. The bits of my body aren't quite as good as they used to be. Although I have been lucky, touch wood, I have been lucky over the years. My injuries, I haven't had that many, serious ones put me out. Those sort of long-term ones where joints just start to degenerate. I've been quite healthy that way. A few traumas, but nothing too serious. I've been lucky. So, I'd love to keep throwing.
Yeah, the other thing we were going to mention here is just technically, bad injuries, how they've happened. I know your start to your season last year was plagued with injuries, and then I just remember you went away for maybe a few weeks, and it was all of a sudden something clicked, and it was like, oh, Scott's back.
It's never gone away. I just got what tablets to take in order to make the pain go. But no, I mean, I do have this, I do have a facet problem in my spine. I did have quite a long-term sort of nerve problem down my left leg, and it just meant I just couldn't swing a hammer. But it has definitely improved. It's taken a long time. I could easily have stopped at that point, but I kind of felt like I wasn't damaging myself anymore, and it was just temporary pain, and I guess I'm right. We'll see what my back's like in 10 years. Maybe I'm making a terrible decision to carry on.
I've seen Lucas Venter put you in some strange positions to sort things.
The old piriformis stretch, yeah.
I think everyone here's experienced some Lucas Venter Polish magic. I've had sore shoulders, sore backs, and he'll just tell you to do two things: push you a certain way, and I don't understand it at times, but you just feel like you're back to your usual self.
Lucas is fantastic. He has all these little Polish remedies. Things he won't do. He won't eat chicken. He says chicken's bad for you. He makes his own bread. He's a great guy, Luke.
Have you actually tried some of his bread? Like, it is tremendous. He gave me a garlicky sandwich once, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Have you seen Sebastian recently? Speaking of people making changes once they've stopped throwing,
I've just seen pictures of him online. Yeah, he
unreal.
He is unreal. Yeah, he's absolutely unreal. If I had to wrestle him once to do these games. Did I ever tell you this? it was the first
Highlander.
Yeah. And we had to. I remember we met up in the hotel in it was where was it? It was Blair Athol. We met up in the hotel, and we had to draw lots to see who would. We had to backhold wrestle, and I think that year or the year before he'd come second at World's Strongest Man. He was enormous. And of course, as I knew it would happen, I drew lots and I got Sebastian. So I had to Cumberland backhold wrestling. And there was a horrible moment as we had to, as I sort of tried to grip him, I couldn't close my fingers around his back. It was a horrible
He's too
moment.
big.
Scott,
Oh.
can I ask who were you hoping to wrestle against? Like who was the weak link, so to speak?
I'm not sure actually. In some ways, I was lucky because he wasn't a nasty guy, Sebastian. He could have done me an awful injury, but he actually just kind of sort of placed me gently on the ground. It was quite unmanning. I didn't proud of myself. At least I didn't get hurt.
There were some scary characters at a few of those Highlander events, weren't there? Some Eastern Europeans, some monsters.
There were, yeah. Creel was a big character at the time.
Yeah,
You threw against Creel, didn't you?
Yeah, a couple of times. He was a shot putter, was he not?
No, he was a discus thrower. I think he went to.
Was he discus? Was he?
Yeah. I think he went to. I want to say he went to Sydney, 2000 Olympics as a discus thrower for Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely one of those scary characters. But yeah, it's a shame there's not really any more of those Highlander events. They were always really good for the crowd, weren't they?
They were, and I mean, those were Gregor's games, and it's good that those games are still happening. Gregor and Doogie are, a huge part of the games in Scotland, and responsible for obviously Gregor's own career was stellar.
Yeah.
But if you think about the guys that they've encouraged, brought, to Scotland, and guys like Lucas and Sebastian, and Carril, and so many more. Obviously Doogie especially. They've really raised the bar, made the sport more exciting for people to watch.
Definitely. What do you see? Again, we've discussed it briefly, but do you see throwing sort of distances improving over the next kind of 5 to 10 years, or what would that depend on?
I think these things go in sort of waves. There was a time when the hammer was fantastic in Scotland, wasn't it? Obviously back in the day when Bill was throwing 150 and Arthur, and then there was another sort of big Scottish period, wasn't there, with Alistair and Bruce and Stephen King, where
big hammers.
Yeah, and I think we've just come through a period where putting's really been, probably the most impressive thing happening in Scotland. And I think it just depends on what certain athletes are good at. You get some guys who are sort of hitting mid-80s in the 28, and all of a sudden you've got a couple of guys maybe are going to start hitting 90. It all depends on what you need to do to win. Where the depth is in terms of the talent in any particular event. I think weight over bar is coming up a bit in Scotland. Kyle's now throwing much higher. Lucas and obviously Vlad's throwing high, and last year we had the Americans over, and Colin, throwing world records. Yeah,
it seems to be an event that all the Americans kind of excel in. So even if you look at the amateur rankings, there's most guys are over 16 foot there. I know we've talked about some of the differences, but there's no doubt that they are. They do tend to be stronger in that event.
They do. It's always bugged me. I've always found weight over the bar to be. I just don't understand. I've never really understood it. Caber's a difficult one to crack, but there's some guys who are just inexplicably rubbish at weight over, and some guys who are just inexplicably fantastic at it. And I've tried to think. Is it correlated to deadlift? Is it about explosiveness? Is it technical? And I just don't understand. My person never really changed or improved much over the years. I think I pretty much, within a couple of games was throwing 15-6, never really thrown much higher in sort of all my years of competing. I think I've added about 13 inches to my best.
I hate it. I absolutely hate weight over the bar. I think Hawkirk 2016, I was sitting in 4th place at Worlds coming into weight over the bar in Caber, and
you were on fire that day.
Yeah, I had a good day in Hawkirk. I love Hawkirk. I just really like it as a games, and obviously a bit of history. My dad would always compete there, and I like going up there. But yeah, after weight over the bar in Caber, I definitely wasn't still in 4th.
Yeah, it's a tough event. Of course, Ryan was notoriously brilliant at weight over the bar, and he just had to be just super good at everything else, so he could lose the points and still win.
Yeah, I think he did 16 once. We're actually hoping to get Ryan on the podcast, so looking forward to that as well. But no, it's been great having you on, Scott. Is there anything that you'd like to maybe finish up with? Any good stories for folks? We've talked a lot about Hamish, but is there anything that you'd like to share?
Well, I think we need to discuss the box a bit more.
Love a box discussion
with the special Sinky add-on.
At the front, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
6 inches behind the back line.
Only on the back swing.
The special Sinky box. No, but I mean, you guys are training. You think we're going to get some games in next year? I mean, do you think this could go on that long?
Oh, I mean,
hopefully not. I think, like I said, I didn't do many games last year with a wee baby arriving, but been looking forward to this summer, and a bit frustrating there not being any games. But at the same time, I think it's a bit of an opportunity to work on a lot of those weaknesses, and hopefully we will get back to a full sort of schedule next season. Really disappointing if we don't, and I think we'll all need to focus on something else. It's difficult knowing what to do at this time. Do you keep throwing?
Maybe to do some indoor athletics, maybe?
Yeah, well, I was speaking to Kyle about that yesterday, and I think I know I've chatted to you about it in the past, but I might start looking at doing a bit of full rotation training again for the shot. Something I did a wee bit of in 2016, but never really took it into the Highland Games. So I've got a bit of time now over the next couple of months that I might sort of dedicate to working on the full rotation. So maybe expect a few videos.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a better technique. I think you can just push harder because you're on. You set up on that one leg as you turn around. I think with the modified, you always tend to lead in with the shoulders.
I have a bad tendency to drift left. But Kyle, what took you to the glide? I know you mentioned it was more consistent for you, but I've seen you throw pretty far with a front on. Have you ever thought about the full rotation?
I have previously tried that. I can remember when I first started training with Lucas, like 4 or 5 years ago. He was sort of glide, and I was like, nah. And what he basically said to me is, like, you're maybe not going to putt quite as far as a glide, but if it's rainy or the ground's not as bad, you're a lot more sure-footed. But I mean, I've putted. If we take the light stone as an example, or the light putt, I'm maybe. Nowadays, if I'm not putting 50, I'm pretty gutted. But my PB with a glide is 53.11, I think. No, sorry, that's a lie. My glide with a spin is 53.11. That's a modified South African. My best glide's 54.6, I think. So it's definitely. I mean, I've put a lot of frustration into learning the glide, but I mean, I think it's came good now. But
where did you throw that, Carl?
I think I would be Ballater games.
Oh, it's a
big,
nice stone,
big basketball stone, is it?
Yeah, both the stones of Ballater are fantastic.
I need to say, I've always found stones easier to throw than putts. I don't know if I hold the implement terribly wrong, or I don't know what it is, but I've always putted stones further than I have balls. I just struggle with a shot putt. I don't know what it is.
Scott, do you think that's something to do? You mentioned you had, was it 4 British titles indoors? Is that because you can use a bigger shot?
I think it was just because I would just compete. There wasn't games to get in the way of competing. It was. Yeah. I would kind of concentrate more on the season. I would do outdoor meets, but I just didn't want to miss the games.
Yeah.
I would. Quite a few times I didn't even go to British Champs because it was always the same weekend as Loch Lomond. And yeah, the games just took over for me. I just enjoyed it more, and I think as well, I just kind of realised, I'm not going to throw a shot 21 meters. It's just not going to happen. So it takes you a few years to sort of face that reality.
I need to express my disappointment. You not mentioning one of your favourite games memories being when I lifted you in the River Spey.
Well, this is the thing I'm most upset about with no season is we can't do another one this year, Carl.
I know. The first year we did the Dirty Dancing lift. Last year we did the Rocky training run. I mean, did we
This
just
year
break?
it was going to be Ghost. It was going to be the pottery scene from Ghost, I think.
Not even sure how we go about doing that, but yeah.
We've got a whole year to plan. We've got a whole year to plan. I think we need to up our production value as well.
Thanks,
Scott. One of the most pressing questions on production value there. So 2015, we had a film crew follow us for the whole season, and they returned in 2016 and filmed your World Championship performance. Did you ever get the footage?
No, I haven't. No, it's one of the only games in recent world that's never been filmed.
Yeah, I know.
I feel cheated. I feel completely cheated.
You know something interesting, right? I played rugby occasionally during the winter, and I was playing against Crieff, and some guy in the other team was like, "All right, how you doing?" And I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" I didn't realise where I knew him from, and it was one of the gents that had been part of that crew. So
yeah, that's him. That's him.
Possibly...
I work for Scottish Rugby, so we know where to find him.
There you go. But I can remember that season. You'd just be sitting having a chat, and as I'm sure people can imagine, we're not always talking about gardening tips and how nice your dinner was last night. And you'd just be standing there talking, and all of a sudden this boom would just appear below you and slide through your legs, and you thought, oh, I say, boys, isn't this a wonderful day to be out here doing a thing? You know, you'd have to be on your toes for it.
The boom would emerge from between your legs, and
they did follow. They followed everywhere, so they came over to Pleasanton as well.
They did, yeah, and then they then came back and did a bit more filming in 2016 because they only really came to that World Championships. Yeah, but I mean, they spent a huge. They came to my house, interviewed my kids in the garden. It was amazing. I mean, they put a hell of a lot of time and money into it. I'd love to see it. I guess they're hoping to sell it still, but thing is, it's a bit dated now, isn't it? I mean, we're sort of 4 or 5 years on from that.
It'll be the new Heavies documentary.
Yeah, but I think they owe it to us actually. Let's watch whatever they made. You know, I'd like to see.
Yeah, no, it'd definitely be good to see. But Kyle, have you anything else for Scott? I think it's been really good catching up, especially given that we're probably not going to see each other this year. But any sort of further questions for Scott?
I mean, I just want to thank Scott for coming on. I feel like you're a caliber of athlete that you competing in the sport can somewhat make it become perhaps more in the public eye and to be taken more seriously. I think a lot of the time people think it's, you know, we're just a bunch of fat boys throwing metal and cabers about, which, I mean, to an extent is probably true for me, but, you know, I just want to thank you, Scott, for coming on, and obviously it's great having you at the games and just having that chat and that experience about.
No, well, thank you guys, and, you know, I mean, I've done a few sports, but, you know, Highland Games has been, you know, the most enjoyed thing I've done, you know, in sport, and it's been great to spend my summers in Scotland. It'd be nice to spend a couple more, and you know, for anyone listening out there, get involved. There's a whole world of games and wonderful experiences, and you know, there's so many opportunities, and I really would encourage anyone, particularly if you've got a throwing background. I would say shot put and discus, I think, would be the obvious starting points, rather than hammer. You know, get involved, come and do some games. There's a lot to do.
So yeah, Scott, thanks for joining us. Obviously, myself and Sinky will probably keep this running just now, maybe get some more guests on. But yeah, if you've got anything else to add, Sink, I'm just happy to say thanks. Thanks for your
time. Just again to echo you, Kyle. I think thanks for coming on, Scott. It's been good, and if things go well with it, we'll maybe look to have you back involved.
If your viewing figures haven't tumbled too badly after this. No, thanks for having me on, boys. It's been fun. It's been good to catch up.
Cool. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks for coming on, and we'll catch you on the next one.